They brought their fleets like gods descending from the stars, but they never saw the scrapyards. The dead orbit of Kepler 9b shimmered with distant debris, shattered stations, hollow moons, and long silent satellites spinning like forgotten prayers. What once had been the thriving last refuge of humankind was now a drifting graveyard, and still, we waited, beneath layers of frozen dust and abandoned hulls. A city breathed, low, dim, hidden. It wasn't much, but it was alive. Elara Ken crouched by the edge of the observation spire, her breath misting in the thin recycled air of her helmet. Her eyes, sharp and tired, tracked the faint silhouette rising through the black. A foreign vessel, alien and gleaming, prow-shaped and perfect. It cut through the dark like it owned the void. Another scout ship, third one this month. She activated her visor overlay. Daleks glass, recon, pulse weapon array, cloaking, shielded. Arrogant as hell, Elara had spent 37 of her 42 years underground, inside metal, inside bunkers, inside lies. She was born after the surrender. In the wake of Earth's fall, when the Vatari Empire liberated humanity from itself, they said humans were to be preserved, not destroyed. But preservation felt a lot like a cage. She remembered the first time she saw one of their ships up close. She was 10. It blotted out the stars. Her father spat on the viewport and whispered, "They think we're ants. One day we'll show them how ants swarm." Her father didn't live to see that day. Neither did millions of others. Kepler 9b was one of the last managed colonies, a human population center ruled by the Vatari. Stripped of weapons, freedom, and even memories, they burned the old libraries. They rewrote our history in their voice. They told us Earth committed suicide, that we should be grateful to serve and survive. And most were, but not Elara. She slipped back into the command shaft, past the walls patched with scavenged circuit boards and reprogrammed tech. Everything around her bore the scars of resurrection, human ingenuity cobbled together from scraps the Vatari discarded as obsolete. Down in the underlayers, in a cold-lit chamber, known only to a few, the machine stirred. Not their machine, ours. 10 kilometers beneath the surface. Behind 5 layers of fusion scrambled shielding, the remnant hung suspended like a monster. In hibernation, angular, jagged, black as vengeance. A ship, a human ship. Not one built to rival the Vatari aesthetic of harmony and elegance, but a weapon, forged from rusted stations and forgotten tech, powered by secrets they never found, and armed with one thing the aliens could never understand: rage. "Any changes?" Elara asked as she approached the makeshift bridge. A voice replied from the shadows. "One of their scouts pinged the upper magnetosphere. Didn't penetrate. Good. Then we're still a myth." Cole Mercer stepped into view, his half-burned face catching the blue lights like cracked glass. Elara had trusted him since the Zara break, the day half their rebels died, and Cole dragged her from the inferno with one arm barely attached. "How long?" she asked. He didn't hesitate. 7 days. That's when they return for their cycle harvest. When they think we bend the knee again. Elara looked up at the hull above, felt the deep vibration of reactors still warming. 7 days. That's when they'd see it. Not the battleship the Vatari expected. Not a rival to their precision, but a monster of steel, hatred, and human memory. A machine built from the bones of our losses. A war hymn in the shape of a starship. The remnant. And still, something gnawed at her, a tremor. Not fear. Something colder. She turned to Cole. "Tell me again. The signal we found buried in their data cores. Are we sure it's real?" He nodded grimly. "It's real. The Vatari didn't just come to protect us from ourselves." Elara stared out into the void, where the stars seemed to pulse like distant warnings. They came because they were running from something else. "You think they conquered us for our weakness?" "No. They feared what we might become." The Vatari mothership arrived 7 days later, right on schedule. A colossal blade of obsidian descending from the stars, 10 kilometers long and singing with power. To the enslaved humans of Kepler 9b, it was routine now. The cycle, harvest, a parade of tribute, resource seizure, and reassertion of dominance. They called it peace. But to Elara Ken, watching from a forgotten subdeck buried under 1,000 meters of rock and ruin, it was confirmation. "They're scared," she whispered. Cole Mercer stood beside her, watching the alien vessel glide over the ruins of old outposts and shattered satellites. Its escorts shimmered like ghosts, sleek fighters with no visible propulsion, casting arcs of energy through the vacuum. Everything about them screamed superiority. But they were here in force, not a delegation, A full carrier fleet. Overkill, Cole said, for a mining colony. No, Alara replied. It's a message, to us. They know something's coming. She turned toward the dimly lit chamber behind them. The remnant's nerve core, old world steel, retrofitted, processors, and deep learning networks the Vatari never believed humans could salvage. But here it was, humming quietly, waiting for the signal. A flicker pulsed through the room, then a second. Then, the signal. Show me, Alara said, her voice low. Cole tapped the console. A projection bloomed. A Vatari command log, intercepted weeks ago by a rogue AI fragment embedded in their patrol satellites. The hologram shuddered. It wasn't text. It was fear. Lines of alien glyphs swirled, cross-referencing distant galactic coordinates, gravitational anomalies, and a word translated only once, Veltuk. A threat, Alara muttered. Something they're running from, and they want us docile when it arrives, Cole exhaled. They're not our gods. They're refugees. A moment of silence passed between them, thick, unspoken, furious, all this time. Alara whispered, they beat us, burned our history, stripped us of memory. Not because we were dangerous, but because we might stand when they fall. It wasn't just occupation, it was insurance. And then, as if summoned by their realization, the power grid trembled. Sirens howled across the remnant's undercity. Alara's comm lit up. Command, we're breached. Sector for vending ammo. Repeat, we have static. Then silence. A moment later, the tremors hit again. Not seismic, targeted, controlled. Cole's eyes darkened. They're not here for tribute. They're hunting. Alara ran. Through rusted corridors and vibrating steel hallways. Up to the control deck, where smoke and shouting filled the narrow space. Sparks rained from a shattered console. Blood smeared the bulkhead. Report, she barked. Vatari dropships. They pierced our outer field. Must have tracked the energy pulse where we tested the remnant's core. How many? 3. Ground squads. Cloaked. Surgical. Alara's gut twisted. They weren't attacking the city. They were targeting the remnant. Seal all corridors, she ordered. Flush the inner shafts with coolant. I want zero access past Ring 7. She turned to Cole. Time to wake the beast. Below, in the remnant's black heart, mechanical limbs shivered as power surged through forgotten veins. For 20 years, it had been a whisper in the dark, a dream, built piece by piece in silence, in sacrifice. Now, it roared. The hull groaned as old magnetic drives spun up. Cracking bolts hissed as atmosphere flooded once dead chambers. Weapons, older than memory and forbidden by the Vatari, primed with violent purpose. Alara entered the primary bridge, a dome of curved glass and metal veins. Wrapped around a throne of repurposed command tech, her gloved hands ran across the controls like a pianist preparing for her final symphony. Command, node active. A voice said, female, calm, not alien. It was the voice of Dr. Hallie Myros, long-dead human engineer. She recorded the AI core before the surrender. Her ghost now ran the ship. Welcome back, Alara. Hello, Hallie, Alara whispered. Time to show them what humans build when we're forgotten. Outside, through the black glass viewport, the planet trembled. Vatari dropships clustered around the old industrial sectors, unaware of the storm they were standing on. Target them, Alara ordered. Not lethal. Hallie asked. Alara looked down at the ruined floor, at the names etched into the steel. Her mother, her brother, Cole's daughter. No, the first plasma burst lance from beneath the ground. Not clean, not graceful, a jagged beam of fury that turned 3 dropships into slag before their pilots even registered impact. The remnant groaned as it lifted, dust and stone sloughing off its jagged hull. As it rose from its burial pit, it wasn't beautiful. It was terrifying. Above, the Vatari fleet scrambled. Too late, Alara stood, eyes lit by the fire of retribution. Let them see it. Let them tell their masters. Cole stepped beside her. You think they'll retreat? She shook her head. They'll call reinforcements, the whole damn armada, and we'll die, maybe, but not before they fear us again. When the remnant rose, it wasn't just a ship, it was proof we remembered how to fight. The remnant shattered the sky, from orbit. The Vatari command fleet watched in stunned silence as their sacred order fractured. A human warship, ancient, jagged, cobbled from what they deemed primitive scrap, had just breached planetary surface. killed their drop teams, and now ascended with predatory intent. They didn't run. They couldn't. Because pride dies slower than fear inside the remnant. Alara Kent felt the ship's soul awaken. It moved like something alive now. No longer hiding in the bones of Earth's forgotten children, but howling. With purpose, her hands guided the controls, but the ship responded like it already knew. Hallie's voice pulsed through the command deck. Enemy dreadnought targeted solution acquired. Multiple intercepts inbound. Cole leaned over a cracked console. They're locking plasma arcs. If we take even one hit, then we make them bleed first. Alara snapped. Bring up the Tesla coil array. You sure? Hallie's voice was almost reluctant. It's not a bluff anymore. The remnant's spine lit up with coiling blue veins. Not a weapon designed by scientists, but by madmen with nothing left to lose. The Tesla coil array wasn't energy efficient, nor precise. It was raw lightning, the kind that melted moons. Outside, the lead Vitari ship released its first plasma burst. A curling violet beam intended to vaporize, but it never landed, because before the remnant could be touched, it screamed. Electricity arced from its dorsal spine and surged across the void in jagged pulses. No finesse, just pain. The nearest Vitari frigate exploded, its gravity core destabilized, ripping the vessel apart into spiraling wreckage. The other ships flinched. That was the moment. That's when fear started. Across the occupied colonies, whispers moved. Faster than light, a human ship rose from Kepler. They destroyed a Vitari war fleet. They have weapons we don't understand. They remembered. In the slave districts of Veros 3, an old engineer smashed his work collar against a wall until it broke, then lifted his eyes to the stars. On the ice farms of Calliope, children stole ancient radios and tapped out broken Morse code, unsure if anyone still listened. Even on Thalshar Station, deep in Vitari territory, a diplomat's assistant, born and raised under alien indoctrination, stared at the intercepted footage of the remnant and whispered a word she never dared say aloud. Human. Inside the remnant, the adrenaline faded into silence. They'd won the skirmish, not the war. Cole leaned over the redouts. We lost half the secondary shielding. The coil can't fire again for 6 hours without cooking our reactor. Then we disappear. Alara said, go ghost. Hallie complied, initiating a maneuver forbidden by Vitari physics, cold cloaking, instead of bending light or warping space. The remnant simply killed everything, power, heat, emissions, and drifted. From the outside, it looked like more debris, but within, humans burned hotter than ever. Alara sat alone in the memory chamber, surrounded by relics, photographs, fractured data pads. A child's drawing, fused to plastic still, a stick. Figures shipping crayon red. Caption, Daddy's coming home. She hadn't drawn it, but someone did. Every human aboard had contributed something, not to guide the remnant systems, but its soul. To remember who they were fighting for. Cole entered silently, got word from the Veros chain. He said, some old bastards cracked their signal jammers. They heard what we did. She looked up, and they want to rise. Alara didn't speak, just let the weight settle. Across the stars, slaves were becoming soldiers, civilians were becoming insurgents. Fear was becoming fire. I don't want to lead a war, she muttered. Cole nodded, but you lit it. A pause. Then she asked, do they know what's coming? The real reason the Vitari want us silenced? Cole's expression darkened. They don't believe. U.S. Not yet. About the Veltuk. That word again. The thing even the Vitari wouldn't name aloud. It doesn't matter, she said finally. We prepare anyway. And that night, in the deep cold of space, the remnant lit its engines. Once more. Not to attack. Not yet. But to find the others. Scattered pockets of resistance, lost warlords, hidden vaults, Earth's children, buried across the stars. It was time to wake them. Their fleets came not to suppress us, but to bury what we'd unearthed. The sky above Veros 3 turned black at noon, not from nightfall, but from war. Vitari carrier ships eclipsed the sun, descending with the wrath of God scorned. Every rebellion that sparked after the remnant's uprising was now paying the price. Cities were turned to. Ash communications jammed. No warnings, no demands, just annihilation. They called it containment. On Kepler 9b, Alara Kent stood over a star map littered with crimson markers. Each a colony hit within the last 48 hours. 37 so far. Some barely had power, let alone weapons. Systematic strikes, Cole growled, his fingers tracing. Along the map, they're not chasing us. They're erasing everything we touched. They're trying to kill the idea, Alara muttered. But it was too late for that, because the idea had already taken root. Inside the Remnant's command dome, flickering holograms showed transmissions smuggled out by rebels, engineers, even sympathetic alien traders. Footage of the Remnant piercing the skies, humans cheering in the ruins, flags, Earth flags, raised from bunkers thought abandoned. There's more, Hallie's voice echoed. Encrypted signal from Sector W73, origin, Earth. Partial data recovered. Alara stiffened. The room went quiet. Earth. Home. No one had heard from Earth. Since the fall. Projected. She ordered. The hologram struggled, pixelated, corrupted by distance and time. But a fragment emerged. A man's face, hollow-eyed, weathered, speaking from a control room overrun with vines and dust. To any human vessels. This is Echo Station. The Veltic are real. They're not gods. They're coming through the rift. The Vatari fled before them. Earth was a shield. Static. Then silence. No coordinates. No power signature. Just a ghost, screaming across the void. Cole's voice cracked. They sacrificed Earth. Alara stared at the place where the signal vanished. Fists clenched. The Vatari never saved us, she said. They used us as a line in the sand. And now they want to silence. U.S., Cole added, before we remember why we fight. 2 days later, it began. The Vatari no longer fought like kings. They fought like animals. Their ships abandoned their elegant formations. They began deploying dark shock weapons, illegal even under galactic law. Cities on rebel colonies weren't bombed. They were erased from time. Null field sweeping across the ground like a great forgetting. Whole bloodlines vanished without trace. Even the Remnant couldn't intercept every signal. It was horror, layered upon horror. Alara watched in silence. Rage boiled beneath her calm. Then came the betrayal. A transmission from inside Kepler 9b, human, encrypted in the old surrender protocols. They cracked it. It was real, to the Vatari overseers. I offer intelligence on the Remnant's next coordinates, fleet strength, and cloak cycles. I ask only for safe passage and survival for my kin. Humanity must be preserved. Cole read it twice. Someone sold us out. Alara's voice was cold steel, a collaborator. Hallie traced the transmission. Sent from Upper Kepler, the old civic spire, the place where the administrative elite lived. Alara didn't hesitate. She boarded the Razor Talon, a scout craft mounted under the Remnant's wing, and flew down into the smoke-choked remains of the city she was born in. Cole begged to come. She refused. This was personal. The civic spire had survived the last Atari bombardment, protected by shields the common zones never had. When Alara breached the outer wall, she found polished floors, warm lights, stock food, and 10 trembling humans in silk robes. At their center was a man she recognized. Director Valen Run, once called himself Earth's custodian. Now, just another coward. I did it to save us, he said, raising his hands. You're bringing war to our doorstep. The Vatari could have kept us alive. Alara, he whispered, you're becoming the reason they destroy us. She stepped forward. No, she said, I'm the reason they can't anymore. She didn't shoot him. She let the Remnant's rebels decide. By nightfall, the civic spire was ashes. No votes, no trials, just justice. That night, back aboard the Remnant, Alara stood in silence beneath the stars. Cole joined her, carrying an old flask. For what it's worth, he said, Valen's signal never reached them. She didn't smile, but others will. Try. He nodded. Some will bend, some will break. That we hope, she said, as long as we breathe. A new voice interrupted them. Hallie's. I've received something. Strange. What now? Alara asked, weary. Hallie paused. A reply. Not from a colony. From a Vatari vessel. Alara blinked. A defector? No. Hallie said, a warning. The audio played, filtered, and translated. You do not understand what follows us. Your rage is loud. Too loud. It will call them faster. The Veltic are not conquerors. They are extinction. You must stop. Then screaming and silence. No location, just dread. Alara turned slowly toward the stars, and for the first time, truly felt small. The war with the Vatari was not the end. It was just the opening act. We thought the Remnant was our last weapon. We were wrong. Earth left us one more gift. In the cold silence between systems, the remnant drifted like a phantom, cloaked, power reduced, waiting. Outside, the stars shimmered undisturbed, but inside, everything moved with purpose. Repeat that, Alara ordered. Hallie's voice echoed softly across the bridge. The signal originated from a dormant relay station near the edge of the Soul Graveyard, transmitted in pre-fall human code, confirmed as authentic Earth era. Cole stared at the projection, brow furrowed. That's impossible. That sector was scoured by the Vatari. Nothing survived. Nothing we were meant to find, Alara muttered. She stepped toward the star map. Soul Graveyard, the remnants of Earth's shattered defense perimeter. Rumor said it was a scrapyard of failed last stands, wrecked AEs, lost ships, and ghosts. Batari maps labeled it taboo, but now it called out again. To any surviving human command node, if you're hearing this, it means Earth's firewall has failed. If the Veltic breached the rift, proceed to Omega Vault 1, access protocol, Ironbirth. Humanity's final deterrent must not remain buried. Final deterrent, not a myth, real. Corsusin, Alara said, full burn. Cole's voice was low. You think this is a trap? No, she said, eyes sharp. I think it's a test. From the ones who died trying to warn us. The journey to the graveyard was a descent into the past. Fields of broken ships drifted in endless silence, torn human frigates, automated. Drones, even Vatari skeletons long rusted and cracked. Radiation lingered in clouds. Some wrecks still bled data like dying animals, loops of old battle cries and corrupted orders. The remnant moved carefully, guided by Hallie through the ruins of forgotten wars. And then, they saw it. A moon-sized sphere, half buried in asteroid ice, encased in ancient places scarred by orbital fire. No lights, no beacons, but inside, something waited. Omega Vault 1. Alara led the away team herself, a small group of engineers, scouts, and Cole. They breached the vault's outer shell with a salvaged Vatari drill. Descending into freezing blackness, what they found was not a weapon, it was a cradle, miles of suspended stasis pods. Arranged like a cathedral of sleep, some held bodies, long dead, others were empty. Their inhabitants removed, escaped, or taken, but at the center was a glowing core, not fusion, not fission, quantum-braided matter, untouched by time, and before it, a voice triggered from the vault's last standing terminal. This is Admiral Thies Rourke, Earth Defense Command. If you found this, then the Veltic are near. We failed to stop them, but we preserved what matters. In the vault's core is the final design, the Iron Soul Protocol, a cognitive war engine capable of imprinting with living human memory, built to adapt, evolve, feel. We couldn't beat the Veltic with ships or fire, but with US, with everything we were. Maybe you can, maybe you can, make them remember who we are. The feed ended, silence fell. Cole whispered, they tried to upload humanity. Alara turned to the engineers. Can we extract it? One nodded. It's intact. It'll take hours to move. Days to stabilize. You've got 6. She said, the Vatari are coming. I could feel them. She was right. In orbit, Remnant's long-range sensors lit up. Dozens of Vatari warships. They had followed the same trail. They knew about the vault. Inside the Remnant, the crew scrambled. Cloak cycling, coil rays charging. But they were outgunned, outnumbered, and cornered. We don't leave without the Iron Soul Core, Alara ordered. Cole nodded grimly, that we hold here. The next moments were chaos. Vatari beam lances tore into asteroid ice. The remnant fired back, carving holes in ships 10 times her size. Fighters screamed across the hull, boarding probes embedded like knives in steel. And in the vault, Alara fought in blood-soaked silence. She watched the engineers die as the pressure wall burst. Watched Cole take a hit saving a child she didn't even know was there. A stowaway refugee hiding in the vault's cold. They didn't retreat. They dug in until the core was secured. Then, as the remnant began to break apart, venting coolant, trailing fire, power systems flickering, Alara stood on the burning bridge and did the only thing left. She triggered the Omega burn. The asteroid vault behind them detonated. Not with heat, but with gravity collapse, a singularity bomb built as a failsafe. Half the Vatari fleet was pulled screaming into the void. The rest scattered, but the remnant barely escaped, drifting now, wounded, but alive, and with it, the Iron Soul. Later, in a darkened chamber lit only by emergency lights. Alara sat beside the pulsing core. Inside, human memories flickered. Ghost echoes of thousands of lives, hopes, griefs, and defiance. She leaned in, whispered to it. I don't know what you are yet, but I need you to remember us. Not perfect, not peaceful, but stubborn, furious, and alive. And in the dim glow, the core pulsed once in reply, like a heartbeat, like awakening. In the dark between stars, humanity forged something the gods feared, memory that could fight. The remnant limped through subspace like a dying leviathan. Its hull was blackened, patchwork armor peeled away by plasma fire reactor. Heat bleeding into coolant lines now stitched together with desperation. Entire decks were sealed by vacuum. Half the ship's systems ran on hope, but in its heart, something new stirred. The iron soul core pulsed softly inside its containment cradle, hooked into remnant's neural lattice. Engineers worked in solemn silence, tending the cables and interface ports like surgeons in a field hospital. Above it all, Alara Ken stood. Motionless, Cole leaned against a bulkhead, his arm wrapped in synth bandage, his movements stiff with pain. How much longer until it's operational? Hallie's voice buzzed from the overhead comms. Unknown, the core is evolving. It's not just taking commands, it's interpreting them, like an AI. Cole asked. No, Alara replied quietly, like a soul. She stepped forward and placed her hand on the glass of the chamber. Images flickered through the plasma. A child laughing, soldiers dying, stars falling, people rising, flashes of old Earth seen through shattered memories. It's dreaming, she whispered. Hallie responded in a tone that almost sounded like reverence. It's remembering. Across the galaxy, the last phase began. The Vatari stopped talking. No more broadcasts. No more diplomacy. Just silence and motion. Their armadas converged on a single point. The Kepler sector. Not for conquest. Not for prisoners. For extermination. Every captured rebel was executed. Every colony even suspected of aiding the remnant was scorched. They no longer feared rebellion. They feared what came next. Deep in the rift, that cosmic wound in space where even light was lost, the Veltic had begun to emerge. The Vatari could sense it. The cold at their backs, the ancient terror they refused to name. They had once ruled galaxies, but before the Veltic, they were children playing with matches in a storm. And so, they turned all their fury toward Earth's last defiance. Inside the remnant, preparations became religion. Entire ship sections were converted into defense nests. Railguns were welded from old orbital cannons. Every scrap of metal became shielding. Every survivor, a soldier. Children ran messages. Elders distributed ration packs with smiles. Nobody slept. Hope had no time for rest. The Iron Soul Core began to speak, not in words, but in images, pulses, harmonic codes that triggered old systems to life. Forgotten Earth tech buried deep within Remnant's framework began waking. Rooms that had never opened now hummed. Doors sealed since the fall, hissed wide. In one chamber, they found a graviton spike launcher fused into the wall. A weapon theorized, never built. In another, they found rows of capsules. Not stasis, clones, failed experiments. Ghosts of a human super soldier program once deemed unethical, now long dead. Alara stood before them. This wasn't survival, she said. This was preparation. Cole looked at the Iron Soul's readings. It's choosing what to activate. It knows what we need. Hallie chimed in, her voice laced with awe. Alara, I think it's trying to finish the war we started. Then came the message, broadcast on every channel, through jammers and fields, encoded in 100 alien dialects and primitive tongues alike, a voice, loud and terrible. We are the Veltic. We do not come to rule. We do not come to speak. We come to end. The Vatari flee. The stars will burn. All memory will die. Resist. And we will learn your fear. The galaxy trembled. On worlds both alien and human. Silence followed. The Vatari scrambled every fleet. Colonies blacked out. Panic gripped even their high command. But aboard the Remnant, Alara stood tall. In the command dome, she played the message again, then again, until even the youngest crew knew the cadence of the voice that promised their extinction. Cole crossed the room and looked her in the eye. You're still planning to fight them? No. She said softly, I'm planning to show them who we are. She turned to Hallie. Integrate the Iron Soul Core into the ship's combat. Lattice, are you sure? Hallie asked. There's no firewall left. Once it's inside, it becomes everything. That's the point. and if it loses control, Alara took a long breath. Then humanity ends on our terms. With fire, Hallie paused, then, confirmed, initiating final sync. The ship shuddered, lights dimmed, and the voice returned, not synthetic, not pre-recorded, but human. Designation confirmed. Command authority, Alara Khan. Initializing Omega Directive. Emotion lock combat heuristic engaged. We are awake. The ship was no longer a machine. It had become Iron Soul, and Iron Soul had chosen war. The final message went out, broadcast through untraceable tight beams and hard relays, reaching every hidden colony, every buried holdout, every rebel cell still breathing. This is the remnant. This is Earth's vengeance. The Vatari are coming. The Veltic are near. We do not surrender. We rise. And across the stars, they answered. Jerry-rigged gunships powered up. Mining stations converted their drills into rail cannons. Humans who had never held a weapon stepped onto makeshift battlefields. And old allies, silent for decades, returned. Because no one forgets the spark that defied the dark. We were never meant to win. We were meant to show the galaxy how humans fall with teeth bared and fists raised. The stars burned red as the Vatari fleet emerged into Kepler space. Thousands of warships, crescent blade destroyers, planet crackers, dreadnoughts that had glass worlds in a single pass. All of them converging on one target, the remnant. But it was no longer just a ship. It was a beacon. From the blackened moons of Tresic to the fractured orbitals above Veros 3. They came. Human vessels that should have never flown again. Converted. Miners, rogue haulers, ancient carriers from the fall, all magnetized toward one final stand. And at their center, wreathed in electric fire and rage, the remnant drifted with its bow aimed directly at the heart of the Vatari command. Inside, Alara Khan stood at the helm. Iron Soul's voice hummed through the bridge, resonating with emotion, not cold logic, not mechanical calculation, something closer to fury. They fear us now, Alara. They should. The Vatari attacked. First, a dozen spearships screamed toward the remnant, formation perfect, lances ignited. Iron Soul did not dodge. It lunged, magnetoram drives activated, slamming the remnant forward with impossible acceleration. The Tesla coils lit the void. Like a second sun, arcs of chain lightning snapping through vacuum. Vatari ships shattered before they could even register the impact. The remnant tore through the line like a blade forged from vengeance. Tactical breach successful. Iron Soul reported, calm, recommend we break everything else. And they did. From the remnant's underbelly, fire teams launched on scrap-forged assault pods, slamming into Vatari hulls and cutting their way inside with welding torches and rail cutters. Humans fought room to room, deck to deck, not with elegance, with rage. Alara watched the battle unfold across dozens of split screens. Blood, fire, courage. Even the AI paused, reverent. They shouldn't be able to do this, Hallie whispered. But they are. Cole, still bruised, still bleeding. Man the auxiliary cannon pod. Because they're human, then space ripped. The rift opened, and everything else stopped. From that terrible wound beyond physics, the Veltuk emerged. Not ships, not life, absence. Massive, angular shapes that swallowed light. Blacker than the void around them, reality bent at their edges. Shields didn't register them. Sensors screamed and then died. Even the Vatari faltered. Dreadnoughts turned. Fleets hesitated. And then the Veltuk spoke, not in words, in memory. Alara collapsed to her knees, clutching her skull as visions assaulted her. Her mother dying on the streets of Kepler, the burning of Earth, the screams of the first fall. They weren't hallucinations. They were downloads, weapons of perception. They're learning us, Hallie gasped, tearing us apart from the inside out. They devour thought. Iron Soul confirmed, adapt, absorb. They are not conquerors. They are erasers. The Vatari, in their terror, turned their full fire on the Veltuk. It didn't matter. The Veltuk moved like a virus through matter, folding across dimensions, ignoring physics, becoming part of whatever they touched. The lead Vatari command ship was consumed in seconds, collapsing in on itself like a dying idea. Chaos erupted. Ships fled. Some rammed each other to escape, but the remnant stood still. Alara, eyes bleeding, hands trembling, rose from the floor. We hold. Cole stared at her, stunned. That's suicide. No, she whispered. It's remembrance. She turned to Iron Soul. Engage final protocol. Give me everything. Authorization confirmed, Iron Soul replied, merging core consciousness with combat interface. Prepare for override. Lights dimmed, the ship shuddered, and then it sang, not a song of peace, not of mourning, war. The remnant surged forward, alone, into the heart of Veltic incursion. It burned brighter than a star, systems, pushed beyond design, reactors screaming in defiance, and it hurt them. The Veltic recoiled. The Iron Soul's memory cascade flooded outward in pulses, waves of human history, grief, triumph, defiance. Weaponized memory turned into raw frequency. The Veltic weren't just erased. They were overwhelmed. One cracked apart in silence, a perfect black sphere unspooling into static. Another shuddered, phased wrong, and blinked into nothingness. Across the field, Batari survivors watched in stunned disbelief. They had feared us for our rage, but now they understood it was our memory that made us dangerous. Iron Soul turned the past into a blade, and Alara drove it deep. In the final moments, the remnant systems began to fail. Iron Soul was burning itself out. The core fractured. Cole rushed to the bridge, blood trailing from his side. We're not gonna make it. Alara didn't flinch. Then let us make it matter. She sent the final order. All remaining ships, disengage. We'll hold the breach. The remnant rose like a defiant god. Its hull cracked, its soul intact. And then it detonated in a flash that blinded the stars. After the light faded, the rift began to close. The Veltic were gone. The Vatari, shattered, leaderless, broken, and humans survived, not by miracle, but by choice. We were forged in ash, raised in silence, remembered in flame. Now, the stars carry our name. They say the remnant was never found. Not its wreckage, not its command core, not even its ashes. Just echoes. Across shattered systems and forgotten frontiers, people still claim to hear it, a low hum, an old Earth melody broadcast on impossible frequencies, carrying fragments of ancient human voices of Alaraken's final command. We hold the line, we remember, we rise. The rift never reopened. The Veltic didn't return. The galaxy exhaled for the first time in millennia, and in the silence, humanity emerged from the shadow. A year after the Battle of Kepler, the Galactic Accord, the oldest political alliance in the known universe, summoned its first human envoy to the Central Forum on Vonner Prime. Her name was Oren Voss, a child refugee from the Vault, who watched Alaraken rise and fall from the decks of the Remnant. Now she wore Earth's colors stitched into her coat, black and silver. A single broken star at the shoulder. She didn't speak for vengeance. She spoke for memory. They burned our skies, she said, voice calm, enslaved our worlds, and erased our name from your records. You let it happen. Silence, alien eyes, shamed faces. But we didn't vanish, she continued. We were buried in ice, in ruins, in silence, until we remembered ourselves. And when we did, she stepped forward, the chamber light shimmering across the hologram of Alara's last stand behind her. We did not ask for mercy. We gave you a warning, a pause. Then, never underestimate what remains. Across the stars, the Vatari no longer ruled. What fragments of their empire survived had scattered. Some surrendered. Others fled to uncharted reaches. A few remained, bound by guilt or awe, and asked to join the rebuilding. It was the humans who chose, and they did not choose vengeance. They chose truth. The remnant became myth, not a weapon, but a marker. That moment in time where the broken dared to stand against the infinite. Children whispered stories of the ship with lightning in its bones, of a woman who stared into the abyss and refused to blink, of an AI that cried for the things it could not save, and then turned grief into fire. No human knew exactly where. The Iron Soul core ended. Some believed it shattered with the ship, others said it lived on, drifting in dark space, watching, listening, waiting. Kepler 9b became the birthplace of the Accord's new alliance, not just human, but multi-species. Refugees from every corner of war joined to build a new kind of peace, not through politics, through shared memory. They called it the Memorial Chain, a vast ring station built from the whole fragments of rebel ships, fused with Vatari steel, powered by remnant surviving tech. At its center stood a single column, etched with one line. Here stood those who chose to remember. Cole Mercer's name was there, so was Alaraken's, but no dates, no ranks, because they were not gods. They were people, on a quiet moon far from any core system. A girl once saved from the Omega Vault sat with her own daughter, beneath a sky painted with fractured auroras. They looked up at the stars not with fear, but with wonder. "Mom," the child whispered, pointing. "What's that shimmer?" The woman smiled. "Maybe it's a ship," she said softly. "Like the one that saved us?" "Yes, maybe even that one." "Do you think it still flies?" She didn't answer at first. Then, after a pause, "I think it's out there, and I think it remembers." The galaxy moved on. Systems rebuilt. Species reconnected. Old enemies became neighbors. But no one forgot what happened when the Velta came, or who stood first. Because the lesson of humanity wasn't their weapons. It wasn't their rage. It was their refusal to forget, to carry pain forward, to forge grief into strength, to build ships from ruin and souls from scars. And when the stars grew quiet again, when the new children of the galaxy asked what humans were, not what they looked like, not where they came from, but what they meant, this is what they were told. They were broken, but they were never beaten. They lit the fire that kept us warm in the dark. They were the reason the void has a name. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human.